2 videos for today because I am procrastinating an assignment and I'm bored and I've been thinking a lot tonight. So let's get to going. When I was younger, I was quite isolated actually. I didn't have a lot of friends and I didn't go out a lot. I'm still learning how to do that, right? But when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't go out a lot. And yet I found that I was more interesting as a person as opposed to now. Whereas now I might be more considered to be sociable, but not necessarily to the point of interest. Now, why is that? Going back to, I guess, being more isolated, and then now there was a period in between that time where I was starting to really come out of my shell, and I wasn't like extrovert level of sociable, but I was sociable to the point where it's like if you started a conversation with me, I would be bam, 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 topic, and then just keep the conversation going for hours and hours and hours on end. It was ridiculous because I don't know how I used to do that. And like I could just yap forever, you know? And what would feel like only a couple minutes of talking would end up being like hours and hours and hours. And I could just keep somebody's interest and, you know, it was impressive. And I think to myself, like, how did I do that? And I realized when I started to lose part of myself, it was, you know, when you spread yourself too thin. This is the equivalent for most people anyways, is they spread themselves too thin because they're focusing on everybody else's needs. This might mean family, friends, work, etc. Or if you're in a relationship with somebody who's extremely needy, and hopefully not, but probably like a narcissist, right? The thing is, if you're constantly catering to somebody else's needs and never your own, then how are you supposed to keep up with those things, right? Because our interests come in the form of experience, and that experience comes in the form of knowledge, and that knowledge is proven in the form of memory. Now, how do we keep memories? Well, it's often short-term, but dictated by long-term. And how do we keep a long-term memory? The basics of keeping a long-term memory is recalling it time after time after time over a consistent period of time till it becomes memorized, right? Because if I remember 2 plus 2, well, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 4, you know, and you start doing that, but then you automatically know eventually 2 plus 2 is 4, right? It's a period of time where you're slowly extending that memory into something that just becomes natural. So memories, just like skills, just like exercise, just like playing the guitar, our interests and hobbies, they are very much like skills. They will get rusty if we don't attune to them. Meaning, if we aren't keeping up with our favorite show, if we aren't keeping up with our favorite anime, if we aren't keeping up with our favorite band, if we aren't constantly recalling that information, what's going to happen is it's going to be rusty, and then we're going to slowly forget about it, and suddenly, boom, you lose your personality. And I kept on wondering for the longest time. Not the longest time, but maybe like the past month and a half, 2 months. Why do I feel like after this, the end of this relationship that I had with this person, why do I feel like I don't have a personality? And the thing was that I was constantly attuning to that person's needs. Because when I was with this person, they would tell me that a lot of people wouldn't show interest in their needs, hobbies, etc. And so I would show interest in their needs, hobbies, etc. just to make them feel seen. But the thing was, it got to the point where I was doing that so much And I was so invested in them that I was more committed to their needs and hobbies than my own, right? The bands that they liked, the series that they read, the hobbies that they were included in, the things that they wanted to focus on, the areas of life that they wanted to pursue. I was so focused in them just to make them feel supported that I wasn't supporting myself. So what happened? I wasn't watching my favorite animes. I wasn't drawing as much as I would. I wasn't working on my car as much. I wasn't even helping my family as much as I would have. And the issue that arose was that I wasn't making memories that were fond of my own interests. And those interests weren't attunable to something that was comprehensible and thus something that I could constantly retain information of. Right? And so it wasn't just that, but when I was constantly attuning to this person's own needs, I wasn't ever communicating my needs. I wasn't ever communicating my interests or the things that I wanted to do because I was so committed to what they wanted, because I wanted to make them feel seen. It's not a bad thing to want your partner to feel seen, and a lot of people actually respect that, right? But when it gets to the point that you aren't focusing on yourself, and this is why a lot of people will get upset when, and I didn't realize this. I didn't realize how big of a difference it makes. But when you focus so much on another person that you don't focus on yourself, this is what happens. This is the result. And so that's why we start to sort of lose ourselves. We lose our personality. It's because we aren't consistently recalling that information, and thus it becomes rusty. Right? It's so stupid because I can remember younger me would be able to recite the entire plot for a certain anime, and now that I'm trying to recall it, I just can't recite it the way I used to. I'll probably have to go back and watch it when I get the time. But it's that. So it's important to, one, focus on yourself if you spread yourself too thin and you find that you are losing your personality. It is important that, excuse me, I had chicken tenders earlier. Oh, they're so good. Anyways, it is important that when we focus on the self and our interests, and the self-preservation and revitalization of the self, we are doing it with interest of the self, right? Not interest of another person or the attraction of another person, with interest of the things that we're interested in. Meaning that it's not just the hobbies. It's not just the anime that you watch or the music that you listen to or this or that or that. It is also the things outside of your comfort zone, because the thing outside of your comfort zone that you are choosing to pursue, whether it be being more social, whether it be being more of this or doing more of that or doing more of that, you are attuning it directly to your own interest, not the interest of another person, meaning it's going to stick more. It's going to have more impact, and you're probably going to be more committed to pursuing that thing than you would for another person. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that for another person, but what I am saying is it's dangerous to do things for other people before doing it for yourself. Also, don't be selfish. Be empathetic, be kind. But don't let yourself get used either. And I was going to bring up a second point. What's the second point? 2. Don't keep on putting yourselves in situations with people that you aren't comfortable with just because you think it's going to help you grow, or if you feel insecure in that situation and you think that there's something wrong with you. You deserve to be surrounded by people who are like-minded and capable in the same ways that you are. You don't need to constantly be surrounded by people who, just because they fit the description of part of what you need, you stay with them. If you are uncomfortable in any way, if you are forcing yourselves into situations that you're not comfortable with, if you are finding that you are not growing, I'm going to pause real quick. I just want to pause real quick. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Okay, welcome back to our regularly scheduled program. Anyways, if you keep on finding yourselves in positions with people who are making you uncomfortable, if you aren't able to express yourself, if their hobbies don't align with yours, then it's the same deal as being with somebody who's using you as a source of supply, right? You aren't ever attuning to your own interests. You aren't ever attuning to your wants or your needs. And you aren't ever expanding upon those interests, meaning that you aren't finding ways to store them in long-term memory, right? Now, I'm not saying like memories aren't stored directly through socialization, but what I am saying is in like the subject of using it as like a topic to socialize, and being able to be more sociable and like talk with people about your interests, then yes, you are going to know how to represent it and talk about it better when you are like constantly fixated on that thing, and when you're constantly talking about it with somebody who also shares the same interest. And this isn't me saying be closed-minded, right? Because it is important to also be with people who are going to teach us things. It is important to be interested in learning and be interested in seeing different perspectives. So just because people's interests don't align with us all the time, 100% of the time, it's not a bad thing. What I am saying is, obviously, don't keep on being surrounded by people who don't have similar interests just for the sake of socialization, right? Because you deserve that comfort, and you deserve the ability to open up and blossom with people who have like-minded interests. And that's a beautiful thing that forms when you have people like-minded interests, or at least somewhat like-minded interests. You get creativity, right? Because this person and this person, they both like video games, right? But this person likes MMORPGs and this person likes FPS shooters, and they find a way to combine their knowledge of video games to create an MMORPG first-person shooter. You know? That would take a lot of work. And would it be free? Would it cost money? You see, creativity is brewed in the conceptualization of like ideas of interests. It's not created in just, what's the word? Discord, right? And I guess that brings up another topic, like what should we actually look for when we're having a conversation? Should we look for the longevity of the conversation, or should we look for the substance of the conversation? In my mind, personally, it's the substance. In my mind, what I want from a conversation is to learn. What I want is creativity. What I want is ideas to commit to. What I want is shared empathy, and what I want is, you know, being able to create a bond with somebody. But if it's just letting somebody talk and ramble on, and I'm not learning anything, or I'm not like actually like forming a bond with this person, or if it gets to the point where it's like, okay, I was listening to you because I want to make you feel heard, but now it feels like you're just rambling and I'm just kind of here, and I'm kind of tuning you out now. You know, it's like, well, what do you do then? That's not good. You don't want that. Nobody wants that. Yeah. So yeah, just the basics of it are like, what happens when people spread themselves too thin, or they're in a relationship with somebody that just needs a constant amount of attention and they haven't necessarily found themselves yet. What happens with people who say, like, I need to work on themselves, is that they're trying to self-regulate. Even if they don't realize this directly, even if they can't pinpoint and state that, it is their body's way of self-regulating. Because the body will realize it enough, the body and mind will realize it enough to say, like, hey, something's wrong. Maybe a little bit of time spent to the self is better than doing this or doing that or socializing. Because when it comes to our interests and when it comes to the things that make us excited, when it comes to the things that have deeper value and give us our quote unquote personality, those are going to be experiences, and those are going to be knowledge that we've learned over time. Those are going to be traditions that we've become accustomed to, and they're going to be, mannerisms and stuff like that. But if we're not put in a constant state of just being allowed to be the self, and part of being the self could be a nurturing nature, but I find part of myself to be very nurturing, and yet I still lost myself because I have other factions of myself, other parts of myself that nurture the nurturing part. Because how am I nurture the nurturing part, nurture the nurturing part, nurture? How did I become nurturing? I became nurturing through sources of media that told me and showed me how. That showed me why I feel this way and showed me why it was right. Whether it be something silly like music or an anime character, just because I like the way they act and I felt like, hey, that feels right and I want to be like that, right? But if I'm not constantly committed to the source of media that helps me understand the nurturing part of my personality, then I might lose touch with that nurturing part of that personality and then not understand where it's coming from. And if I don't understand where it's coming from, then I might have second thoughts. I might start getting irritable. I might start getting upset. I might start wanting to isolate just because part of myself feels like something is missing. You get what I'm getting at? In an ideal relationship, in an ideal world, the best version of yourself is the self. And that's just not the self where it's like if you have a nurturing personality or something of the like, where you constantly give that thing 100%. It's the part of the self that nurtures that nurturing personality. It's the part of the self that nurtures the rest of the self. It's the part of the self. It's all the components that make up your personality. It's not the output. It's also the input, right? And if you aren't getting any input, how are you supposed to get any output? It's like that example of when people are like, here's my cup and I'm going to fill the cup up. But oh no, I don't have any more water from my cup because I've been filling other people's cups. Oh no, I don't have any water in my cup. Like, what am I supposed to do? You get what I'm getting at? There's a lot to learn when you grow up. And you look at those silly little metaphors where they talk about the cup, where they talk about the golden rule, and it really only starts to make sense when it happens to you. But when you hear it and it doesn't happen to you yet, you're like, yeah, I've heard this 1,000 times. You learn so much from simple quotes that are no more than 10 words long, but they tell you everything about yourself and the life around you and how you should be treated. It's fucking funny, dude. It really is. It's hilarious. So yeah. When people say heal, when people say, I'm going to work on myself, respect that. And if you tell yourself you're going to work on yourself, respect that. And when you're ready to start being around people again, when you're ready to start socializing, with regards to certain situation like family or coworkers, people who you might not necessarily be able to control in your life, but you still have to talk with. If the interests aren't aligning, don't spread yourself thin at that point. You could still like somebody. I'm not trying to like demonize people just because you don't relate to them. But what I am saying is, given the opportunity, try and find people who are more within your circle of interest, because it's really as simple as somebody saying you have a hungry person and then you have a thirsty person. Now, if you're hungry and the other person is hungry, you're both going to go looking for food. But if one person is thirsty, they're going to be looking for water, right? So who do you want to follow? The person looking for water or the person looking for food? Probably the person looking for food. And what's going to happen if you follow the person looking for food? The person looking for food is going to be empathetic to your situation. They are going to understand, like, hey, we're both looking for food. We're both starving right now. Maybe we can share some if we both find some, or if I find some, I can share some with you. And then we can, work out a whole exchange. But if the person looking for water finds food, they're going to use that as a transaction. Because, well, I have something you want. Did you find something I want? Do you have something that's going to get me closer to what I want? I can weigh this food in front of you till you help me get what I want. It's somebody of no similar interest, but they know what you're interested in, thus they might use it against you. And I'm not saying that they will, but some people are like that. But I can almost guarantee you, if you have somebody who is of similar interest and they know that you're of similar interest as well, they will work with you. Now, I'm not saying all people are like this either, right? Bad and good people exist. What I am saying it is more likely, and you are willing to learn from it, and you're almost more guaranteed to find the thing that you're looking for if you're both looking for food. Because a person looking for water is going to go to find water. Person looking for food is going to go find food. It's that simple. So yeah. Is there anything else? I already know in the last video I said, learn to walk away and blah, 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 blah. And that's true. I know I just said, take time to respect yourself. And just a reminder to clarify, don't make yourself closed-minded. That's not going to be good. Be open to learning. In processes like this, curb that ego, because especially when you're in a position where you are learning a lot, there's always going to be a learning curve. And the more you try to fight that learning curve, i.e. not curbing your ego and being open to learning, the more it's going to be devastating, and the more you're going to drag yourself back, and the more you're going to make it harder for yourself if you keep on trying to say, like, hey, this and this and this. Now, granted, if something just isn't working, then something just isn't working, right? But if it's something that you can like genuinely say, like, you know what, this is a part of the process and I just had to stick through it, don't fight it. Just don't fight it, right? Like healing after a bad relationship. Don't fight the healing process. Don't ridicule that healing with cheap dopamine, going around and just flicking your shit to whatever you see on the internet, or unhealthy coping mechanisms like misogyny, or I forget the one for feminists, radical feminist, just anything that's just like, it's clearly not going to get you anywhere, right? That's a personal view. That's such a personal view, right? But it's just like, recognize, I guess that's the better thing to say. Learn to recognize what's necessary and learn to recognize what's not necessary. And that applies to everything. And this can apply to the conversation of the last video where I was saying, like, walk away. Learn to recognize when attacking your insecurities is valid and necessary, and learn to recognize when your insecurities are not insecurities at all, but general wants and needs and things that need to be respected that aren't being respected, and thus you need to walk away from the relationship from, because you're only going to keep on getting hurt if you don't. Right? So, yeah. Like I said in the last one, if you're here trying to heal, if you've already healed, if you're looking back on parts of yourself where it's like, okay, now I'm learning parts of myself through this or that or another thing. If you're just trying to grow as a person, or if you're trying to learn about other people around you. I'm no psychologist. I'm just somebody who can say, maybe not necessarily the life experience that it takes to get this far, but definitely the critical thinking aspect, and partially the research involved, because I am very interested in psychology. So I do tend to watch a lot of videos on this stuff and recognize how things work. At least I've learned to. Again, I'm not a psychologist, so don't back me on that. But I hope you learned something, and I hope you could say something and speak for yourself if you have any shared experiences or things that you want to throw in, as to like why it would be important to focus on yourself after a bad relationship, and why we lose our personalities when we, exit these poor relationships, or we spread ourselves too thin. Do share, right? Do share in the comments. But that's all I've got. That's all I can think about. And yeah, I hope to make videos like this more, because I'm really starting to learn how to, I guess, think the way I want to, and understand things the way I want to, and implement them the way I want to, instead of running blindly. And I think for me to be able to create a channel like this, it's even better to essentially have an open discussion and platform for communication for like-minded people who might be able to even give me more ideas or insights or understanding of their situation. That way I'm not left in the dark running alone, right? Running in the dark with somebody is better than running alone, because, if you run into a pole, you're going to say, ow. But if they run into a pole, they're going to say, ow. And it's not going to hurt that much. So, yeah. Take care. Hope you learned something. Hope you can teach me something. And bye.